Welcome back to our tribute series, where we honor the lives of stars who left us too soon. In part 1, we remembered the struggles and tragic losses of beloved female celebrities. But their stories don't end there. Today, we continue our tribute, shedding light on more incredible women whose lives were tragically cut short due to overdose. Their journeys may have ended, but their impact remains eternal. Lisa Robin Kelly was a bright, talented actress who became a household name as Laurie Foreman on the hit TV series That 70s Show. But behind the laughter and fame was a life filled with struggle, pain, and an ending that left the world in shock. Born on March 5, 1970, in Southington, Connecticut, Lisa had big dreams and the talent to match. She pursued acting passionately, earning a BFA from DePaul University before making her television debut in 1992. Her charisma and beauty quickly landed her roles in popular shows like Married, With Children, The X-Files, and Charmed, but it was That 70s Show that brought her real recognition. However, her rise to fame was met with personal demons that slowly consumed her. Lisa suffered a devastating miscarriage, a loss that sent her spiraling into alcohol abuse. She admitted that her drinking problem became uncontrollable, leading her to abruptly leave That 70s Show during its third season. As her career faded, her struggles with addiction deepened. She faced multiple arrests, including DUI charges and accusations of domestic violence, painting a tragic picture of a woman battling demons she couldn't outrun. In the summer of 2013, after years of trying and failing to regain control of her life, Lisa made a final attempt at rehabilitation. She voluntarily checked herself into a treatment facility, hoping to conquer the addiction that had plagued her for so long. Her manager spoke to her just days before her death and said she was hopeful, determined to start anew. But on August 15, 2013, just days after checking into Pax Rehab House in Altadena, California, Lisa was found dead in her sleep. She was only 43. The initial reports provided no clear cause, but months later, the autopsy revealed she had died from an accidental overdose due to multiple drug intoxication. The irony of her passing in a place meant for healing only added to the heartbreak. She had been seeking help, fighting to reclaim her life, but in the end, addiction won the battle. Lisa Robin Kelly's story is one of immense talent, unimaginable pain, and a tragic reminder of how addiction can claim even the brightest souls. She was cremated, her ashes given to loved ones, and her memory now lives on through the laughter she brought to millions. But behind her radiant smile was a woman who was struggling, a woman who lost her way and, ultimately, her life. Her tragic end remains a sorrowful chapter in Hollywood's history, a cautionary tale of how fame, grief, and addiction can intertwine in the most devastating way. Brittany Murphy was more than just a Hollywood actress. She was a vibrant, talented soul who brought warmth and light to every role she touched. But behind that infectious smile and boundless energy was a tragic story that ended far too soon. On December 20, 2009, at just 32 years old, Brittany collapsed in the bathroom of her Los Angeles home, struggling to breathe. Paramedics rushed her to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead. The official cause: pneumonia, severe anemia, and a toxic mix of over-the-counter and prescription drugs meant to treat cold symptoms. But her sudden death raised countless questions. How does a young, seemingly healthy woman die so suddenly? In the months leading up to her death, Brittany's once bright and bubbly persona had faded. She had lost weight, her voice had become weak, and close friends noticed she seemed exhausted, frail, and constantly unwell. She had been living in a house she believed was cursed, a home where she and her husband, Simon Monjack, had been battling persistent illnesses. The days before her death were heartbreaking. Brittany was physically drained, battling severe respiratory issues, and despite her declining health, she never went to the hospital. She remained in that house, in the care of her mother and husband, both of whom were with her when she collapsed. The world was shocked. This was the same woman who had stolen our hearts as Ty in Clueless, charmed audiences in 8 Mile, and brought laughter with her voice work as Luann Platter in King of the Hill. Her talent was undeniable, her presence unforgettable. But her final days were filled with pain, secrecy, and an eerie sense of tragedy. And then, as if the story couldn't get darker, just 5 months later, her husband, Simon, died in the same house from the same causes, pneumonia and severe anemia. Conspiracy theories swirled. Was there something toxic in the home? Was there foul play? Had she been suffering from something more sinister? To this day, the circumstances surrounding her death remain unsettling. Brittany was born in Atlanta in 1977, raised by a single mother who sacrificed everything to support her daughter's dreams. From an early age, Brittany had an unstoppable passion for performing. Whether it was singing, dancing, or acting, she was a natural. Hollywood quickly took notice, and after years of small TV roles, her breakthrough came in Clueless, where she transformed the shy, awkward Ty into one of the most lovable characters in teen movie history. That was just the beginning. She proved she could do more than comedy, delivering unforgettable performances in dramas like Girl, Interrupted, and thrillers like Don't Say a Word. She was Hollywood's chameleon. Whether she was making us laugh in Just Married or tugging at our hearts in 8 Mile, Brittany had a magic about her that few possessed. But with fame came struggles. The pressures of Hollywood, constant scrutiny over her weight, and whispers about drug use followed her everywhere. She denied it all, but those close to her saw the toll it took. Her career, once red hot, had begun to cool in the late 2000s. She married British screenwriter Simon Monjack, a man many in her life distrusted. He was controlling, secretive, and had a troubling past. After their marriage, Brittany seemed different, isolated, exhausted, and no longer the vibrant star the world once knew. She was losing roles, struggling with her health, and living in a home that seemed to drain the life out of her. And then, just like that, she was gone. Brittany Murphy was a star that burned bright, but flickered out too soon. Whether it was a tragic case of untreated illness, a toxic environment, or something more sinister, one thing is certain: Hollywood lost a rare talent, and the world lost a beautiful soul. Her story remains a haunting reminder of how quickly life can slip away. And to this day, fans continue to mourn the loss of the girl who made us laugh, cry, and believe in the magic of movies. Kim Porter was more than just a model and actress. She was a mother, a friend, and a woman who left an undeniable mark on those who knew her. Born on December 15, 1970, in Columbus, Georgia, she chased her dreams from a young age, stepping into the world of modeling before finding her place in entertainment. She graced the screens in films and TV shows, worked behind the scenes in music, and played a key role in uplifting rising talents like Janelle Monáe. But for all her accomplishments, Kim's greatest pride was always her children, Quincy, Christian, Jesse, and Lila. Yet, despite the success and the love that surrounded her, life had a cruel twist in store. In the days leading up to her passing, Kim fell ill, experiencing flu-like symptoms that didn't seem serious at first. She was treated at home, even spoke about feeling better. And then, just like that, she was gone. On November 15, 2018, she was found unresponsive in her Toluca Lake home. The world was left in shock. A mother, so full of life, had slipped away without warning. It wasn't until months later that the coroner confirmed the cause: lobar pneumonia, a severe infection that had silently taken over her lungs. It was heartbreaking, a reminder of how fragile life can be. At just 47, Kim's journey was cut short, leaving behind children who adored her and a legacy that stretched beyond the cameras. Her funeral was a sea of sorrow as friends, family, and celebrities gathered to say goodbye. Sean Diddy Combs, her longtime partner and father of 3 of her children, was shattered, openly mourning the woman he had spent years loving. Even in death, Kim's name has been pulled into rumors and controversy, but her children have fought to protect her legacy, reminding the world that she was more than the gossip. She was strength, kindness, and grace. Her death left a hole in the lives of those who loved her, an absence that can never truly be filled. And as the years pass, her story remains a painful yet beautiful testament to a life that touched so many. Peaches Geldof was a young woman who seemed to have it all: fame, beauty, a successful career in television and modeling, and a family she adored. But behind the glamorous facade, there was a darkness she could never truly escape. Born on March 13, 1989, to rock star Bob Geldof and TV presenter Paula Yates, she was thrust into the public eye from the moment she entered the world. But tragedy followed her from an early age. When Peaches was just 11, her mother died of a heroin overdose, an event that haunted her for the rest of her life. In her own words, she struggled to process it, burying her grief deep inside and carrying it like a shadow. She built a career as a journalist, writing for Elle Girl and the Daily Telegraph, and later expanded into television and modeling, becoming a fashion icon and a voice for her generation. But beneath her success, there was a void she tried to fill in all the wrong ways. Peaches had experimented with drugs, but when she became a mother to 2 young sons, she swore she had left that life behind. In reality, she was fighting a losing battle. On April 7, 2014, her husband, Thomas Cohen, became worried when she didn't answer her phone. He called a friend who went to check on her at their home in Rudham, Kent. Inside, they found Peaches slumped on her bed, lifeless. Her young son, just 11 months old, was playing in a nearby room, unaware that his mother was gone forever. The police discovered drug paraphernalia in the house, and an inquest later confirmed the heartbreaking truth. Peaches had died of a heroin overdose. The same drug that had stolen her mother had now claimed her too. It was a cruel, tragic cycle that she had desperately wanted to break but couldn't. The toxicology report revealed that the heroin in her system was of a fatal purity, and puncture wounds were found on her body, signs of a habit she had tried to keep hidden. She had been taking methadone for 2 years in an attempt to stay clean, but at some point, she relapsed. She had been using again for months, and it had finally caught up with her. Her father, Bob Geldof, devastated, said in a statement, "How is this possible that we will not see her again? How is that bearable? She was only 25, a young mother with so much life left to live. But addiction doesn't care about potential, and it doesn't care about love." Her final Instagram post, haunting in hindsight, was a picture of her as a baby in her mother's arms, with the caption, "Me and my mom." Days later, she was gone, just like her mother before her. Her funeral was held in the same church where her parents had married, and where her mother's funeral had been held years earlier. A place of love, now touched by tragedy twice. Peaches Geldof's story is one of talent, struggle, and an unbearable sadness that she never fully escaped. She had everything to live for, but in the end, the demons that had followed her for years were too strong. And just like that, another bright light was extinguished far too soon. Leslie Carter was a young talent with a dream, a voice that carried the promise of something special, and a name tied to one of pop music's most well-known families. But behind the music and the fame, her life was full of struggles that eventually led to a heartbreaking end. On January 31, 2012, at just 25 years old, Leslie was found unresponsive at her father's home in Mayville, New York. She had been feeling unwell after a fall in the shower, but no one expected that just hours later, she would never wake up again. The official reports pointed to an overdose of prescription medications, olanzapine, a drug used for mental health conditions, along with a muscle relaxant and Xanax. She had been battling depression, fighting personal demons, and trying to find her place in a world that often felt overwhelming. Her death wasn't just another tragedy in the Carter family. It was a devastating reminder of the silent battles so many people fight behind closed doors. Leslie had so much to live for. Just a year before her passing, she had become a mother, welcoming her baby girl into the world. She had been planning to seek help for her struggles with addiction, with her brother Aaron trying to support her in the process. But time ran out too soon. Her funeral was held in Mayville, but the family's grief was clouded by tension. Her older brother Nick did not attend, saying his family blamed him for her death. The weight of fame, the pressures of life, and the burden of internal pain had taken yet another young soul. But Leslie wasn't just her struggles. She was a passionate musician, a sister, a daughter, and a mother. Born on June 6, 1986, she grew up in a house filled with music, watching her brothers rise to stardom while chasing her own dreams. Signed to DreamWorks Records as a teenager, she had a shot at pop success with her single Like Wow, even making it onto the Shrek soundtrack. But things didn't go as planned, and her debut album was shelved before it could ever see the light of day. She kept pushing forward, later forming a band called The Other Half, hoping to redefine her musical path. But the industry can be cruel, and the road to success isn't always fair. Even though she never reached the level of fame her brothers did, she had a spark, a voice, a presence that those who knew her never forgot. Sadly, Leslie's story ended far too soon, adding yet another chapter of heartbreak to a family that would go on to suffer even more loss, with her younger brother Aaron passing away from a similar fate a decade later. Her death was a painful reminder of how fragile life can be, how even those who seem to have the world at their feet can be struggling with battles unseen. Leslie Carter's name may not have dominated the charts, but her story is one that should never be forgotten. A story of dreams, love, pain, and a tragic ending that came far too soon. Jessica Savitch was a rising star in the world of broadcast journalism, a woman who had shattered barriers and commanded the evening news with a presence that felt both powerful and intimate. But her story ended in a way no one expected, tragically and far too soon. On the night of October 23, 1983, what should have been a simple drive home after dinner turned into a horrifying accident that claimed her life. The rain was relentless that night, making visibility difficult, and as her companion, Martin Fishbein, navigated their Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser, he mistakenly took a wrong turn out of the restaurant parking lot. Unaware, he drove up a narrow, unlit towpath along the Pennsylvania Canal. The ground beneath them was wet and unstable, and suddenly, the car veered off the edge, plunging into the canal's shallow but deadly waters. The vehicle landed upside down, sinking quickly into deep mud, sealing the door shut. Inside, Jessica, Martin, and her beloved dog were trapped as water rushed in. No one heard their screams. No one saw their desperate attempts to escape. By the time a passerby discovered the wreckage hours later, it was too late. Both Jessica and Martin had drowned, their bodies still strapped into their seats, their final moments ones of terror and helplessness. It was a cruel and devastating end for a woman who had fought her way to the top in a male-dominated industry, only to have it all snatched away in an instant. Born on February 1, 1947, in Wilmington, Delaware, Jessica had a childhood shaped by both love and loss. When she was just 12 years old, her father, whom she adored, passed away from kidney disease, leaving a void in her heart and a fire in her soul to prove herself. She discovered her passion for broadcasting in high school, working as a teenage radio host before pursuing journalism at Ithaca College. Her relentless drive led her to Houston, where she became the first female news anchor in the South, then to Philadelphia, where she quickly became a beloved figure, a household name with an almost magnetic appeal. Viewers admired her poise, her striking presence, and the way she seemed to connect with them through the screen. NBC took notice and brought her to the national stage, making her one of the first women to anchor the evening network news. But behind the camera, Jessica's life was far from the polished perfection her audience saw. She battled personal demons, failed marriages, a controlling and abusive relationship, and a rumored struggle with substance abuse. Despite her professional success, she was lonely, often masking her pain behind the bright lights of the studio. Her second husband had tragically taken his own life just 2 years before her death, and Jessica had walked in to find him hanging in their home. She had picked herself up, as she always did, and continued working, but there was an undeniable weight pressing down on her. And then, just when it seemed like she was on the brink of a new chapter, everything ended on that dark, rainy night in Pennsylvania. The news of her death shocked the world. How could someone so vibrant, so full of life, be gone so suddenly? The accident was ruled a misjudgment, a tragic mistake in poor weather conditions, but it left a haunting emptiness in its wake. Jessica Savitch had fought to be seen, to be heard, to prove that she was just as capable as any man in her field. She had lived for the news, had given everything for it. And yet, in the end, the headlines were about her. A woman who had once delivered the nation's stories now became one herself. And while her time was cut short, her legacy as a trailblazer, a fighter, and a woman who refused to back down still lingers, reminding the world of what she achieved and what was so cruelly taken away. Her second husband had tragically taken his own life just 2 years before her death, and Jessica had walked in to find him hanging in their home. She had picked herself up, as she always did, and continued working, but there was an undeniable weight pressing down on her. And then, just when it seemed like she was on the brink of a new chapter, everything ended on that dark, rainy night in Pennsylvania. The news of her death shocked the world. How could someone so vibrant, so full of life, be gone so suddenly? The accident was ruled a misjudgment, a tragic mistake in poor weather conditions, but it left a haunting emptiness in its wake. Jessica Savitch had fought to be seen, to be heard, to prove that she was just as capable as any man in her field. She had lived for the news, had given everything for it, and yet, in the end, the headlines were about her. A woman who had once delivered the nation's stories now became one herself. And while her time was cut short, her legacy as a trailblazer, a fighter, and a woman who refused to back down still lingers, reminding the world of what she achieved and what was so cruelly taken away. Gia Carangi was once the face that ruled the fashion world, a striking beauty with piercing eyes and an unmistakable presence. A supermodel before the term even existed. But behind the glamorous covers of Vogue and Cosmopolitan, behind the flashing lights of Dior and Versus campaigns, was a girl struggling with a darkness she couldn't escape. A girl whose life spiraled out of control, leading her to one of the most heartbreaking deaths in fashion history. She was only 26 when she died, alone in a hospital bed, abandoned by an industry that once adored her. She had contracted AIDS, once the most sought after in the modeling world, was now frail and weak, her final days spent in pain and isolation. No designers, no photographers, no former friends from the fashion world showed up at her funeral. Just a few family members and those who still cared. Her story is one of incredible rise and devastating fall. Born in Philadelphia in 1960, Gia was the youngest in a broken home. Her parents' toxic relationship left her desperate for love, and she found comfort in the underground clubs of her city, particularly drawn to the Bowie Kids, a group of rebellious teenagers. She didn't just model, she commanded attention. She had an effortless coolness, a magnetism that made her more than just another pretty face. But success came fast, and so did the temptations, nights at Studio 54, the endless parties, the drugs, especially heroin, which became her escape from childhood trauma and loneliness. It started slowly, but before long, it controlled her. She'd show up to shoots high, disappear in the middle of assignments, nod off in front of the camera. Photographers tried to help, but the industry moved on. New faces came in, and Gia, once the job stopped coming, she went back home, hoping to rebuild her life. She tried rehab, tried working normal jobs, but heroin had its grip on her. In her final years, she resorted to prostitution in Atlantic City to support her addiction. It was during this time she unknowingly contracted HIV. In 1986, she fell ill, pneumonia first, then the devastating diagnosis. At a time when AIDS was a death sentence and a source of fear, people distanced themselves. Even in the hospital, nurses hesitated to touch her. Gia spent her last days in suffering. She took her last breath, leaving behind a legacy of beauty, tragedy, and a cautionary tale of how fast fame can fade. Her story was later brought to life in the HBO movie Gia, starring Angelina Jolie, ensuring she wouldn't be completely erased from history. But beyond the film, beyond the tragic headlines, Gia was a young woman searching for love, for meaning, for something more. And in the end, she became a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest stars can burn out too soon. She was wild, beautiful, and had a raw energy that couldn't be ignored. She was discovered by a photographer, and within months, she was in New York, walking into a world that would make her a star. She didn't just model, she commanded attention. She had an effortless coolness, a magnetism that made her more than just another pretty face. But success came fast, and so did the temptations, nights at Studio 54, the endless parties, the drugs, especially heroin, which became her escape from childhood trauma and loneliness. It started slowly, But before long, it controlled her. She'd show up to shoots hot, the job stopped coming. She went back home, hoping to rebuild her life. She tried rehab, tried working normal jobs, but heroin had its grip on her. In her final years, she resorted to prostitution in Atlantic City to support her addiction. It was during this time she unknowingly contracted HIV. In 1986, she fell ill, pneumonia first, then the devastating diagnosis. At a time when AIDS was a death sentence and a source of fear, people distanced themselves. Even in the hospital, nurses hesitated to touch her. Gia spent her last days in she took her last breath, leaving behind a legacy of beauty, tragedy, and a cautionary tale of how fast fame can fade. Her story was later brought to life in the HBO movie Gia, starring Angelina Jolie, ensuring she wouldn't be completely erased from history. But beyond the film, beyond the tragic headlines, Gia was a young woman searching for love, for meaning, for something more. And in the end, she became a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest stars can burn out too soon. Whitney Houston, one of the greatest voices the world has ever known, was found lifeless in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel on February 11, 2012. She was only 48. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, but the underlying demons that had haunted her for years, cocaine use and heart disease, played a devastating role. Just hours before, she had been seen looking disoriented, her voice shaky, her once radiant presence dimmed by years of struggle. That night, she was supposed to attend a pre-Grammy party hosted by her longtime mentor, Clive Davis. But instead, her lifeless body was discovered submerged in water. Her final moments remain haunting, a tragic ending to a life that had once seemed destined for nothing but greatness. Houston had captivated the world with her angelic voice, her ability to hit impossible notes with ease, and her unmatched stage presence. Born in Newark, New Jersey in 1963, she was practically raised in music. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a renowned gospel singer, and her cousin, Dionne Warwick, was already a superstar. Aretha Franklin, a close family friend, became an honorary aunt to her. Music was in her blood. By the time she was a teenager, she was singing backup for some of the biggest names in the industry. At 19, she was discovered by Clive Davis, and from that moment, the world changed. Her debut album shattered records, and her voice became the gold standard. Songs like I Will Always Love You and I Want to Dance with Somebody cemented her status as one of the best-selling artists of all time. But behind the dazzling smile and the breathtaking performances was a woman fighting personal battles. Her marriage to Bobby Brown, once a fairy tale, spiraled into chaos, riddled with accusations of abuse, drug use, and public meltdowns. The world watched as Houston, once untouchable, began to crumble under the weight of addiction. Her voice, once crystal clear, began to falter, her performances marred by inconsistency. She tried to reclaim her place, but the years had taken their toll. By the time she released her final album, I Look to You, in 2009, it was clear she was struggling to hold on. In the days leading up to her death, she had been seen behaving erratically, sweating profusely, and appearing lost in a haze. The night before she died, she reportedly clashed with a club security guard, looking disheveled and distant. Then, on that fateful afternoon, she was found underwater, unresponsive. The news of her death sent shockwaves across the world. The Grammy Awards, taking place just a day later, turned into a tearful tribute. Fans mourned, fellow artists wept, and the world was left to wonder how such a powerful voice could be silenced so tragically. Whitney Houston wasn't just a singer, she was a legend, an icon, a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Even in death, her music lives on, her voice immortal, forever echoing through the hearts of millions who still listen, still remember, and still grieve the loss of the woman who once sang as if heaven itself had blessed her with its sound. Dana Plato's life was filled with promise, fame, and talent, yet it ended in heartbreak and tragedy. She was a child star who rose to fame playing Kimberly Drummond on the hit sitcom Different Strokes, capturing the hearts of audiences with her charm and innocence. But behind the scenes, her life was anything but perfect. Born Dana Michelle Strain on November 7, 1964, she was adopted as an infant and raised in the San Fernando Valley. As a child, she had a passion for figure skating and acting, appearing in over 100 commercials before landing her iconic role. Her career took off, but the pressures of fame, coupled with personal struggles, led her down a dark path. At just 14, she began using drugs and alcohol, and by the time Different Strokes ended, she was struggling to find work. In 1991, she was arrested for robbing a video store with a pellet gun, an incident that highlighted how far she had fallen from her days as a beloved TV star. She later served jail time for forging a drug prescription, further showcasing her battle with addiction. Despite attempts at rehabilitation and sporadic acting roles, she never regained the success she once had. On May 7, 1999, she appeared on The Howard Stern Show, where she insisted she was sober and doing well, though listeners called in to express concern that she still sounded troubled. The very next day, on May 8, 1999, at just 34 years old, Dana Plato was found dead in her motorhome in Oklahoma, where she had been visiting her Vince's mother. She had taken a fatal overdose of painkillers and muscle relaxants, initially thought to be accidental, but later ruled a suicide. Her final days were filled with a desperate attempt to convince the world she was okay. But behind closed doors, she was still battling demons that had followed her for years. The tragedy deepened when, in 2010, her only son, Tyler Lambert, also died by suicide, eerily mirroring his mother's fate. Dana Plato's story is one of Hollywood's saddest, a young girl who had everything but lost it all, a cautionary tale of the harsh realities of fame, addiction, and the loneliness that can come when the spotlight fades. Though their light faded too soon, their legacy continues to shine in the hearts of fans.